Music. The living room lights were dim. A weak orange glow from a table lamp fell across the carpet where Noah sat. Legs crossed, building something with blocks that didn't really fit. His hands moved with quiet focus, stacking one piece on another, carefully, precisely, as if this time maybe the tower would stand tall enough to be noticed. The front door opened with a sudden thud. Boots scraped against the floor. Noah didn't look up. He already knew what would happen next. His father's voice filled the house with laughter, not at Noah but at the sight of his little brother Levi sprinting down the hallway. Their father dropped his bag, bent down, and scooped Levi into his arms with the kind of hug you remember for the rest of your life. Noah didn't move. He didn't even flinch anymore. He just pressed another block onto his crooked tower and pretended he didn't hear Levi giggling from the other room. He always tried not to look, but he always did. His father never said anything cruel to him. He never yelled, never hit. He just didn't see him, not really. Not in the way a child needs to be seen. And that kind of silence is louder than any scream. Noah learned something very early in life. That love was something you had to earn. That your presence wasn't enough. That being quiet, obedient, and easy to manage might not get you punished, but it wouldn't get you chosen either. He stopped bringing home his drawings from school. He stopped asking to be tucked in. By the time he turned 9, he had already learned to disappear in a room full of people. And worst of all, no one noticed he was fading. The strange thing is, no one ever thinks of this as bad parenting. There were no bruises, no public outbursts. On paper, his childhood looked perfectly average. But in Noah's inner world, a quiet kind of erosion was taking place, one invisible moment at a time. A boy learns very quickly what parts of him are welcome and what parts aren't. So, he hides the rest. He becomes a version of himself that's easier to love. Years later, Noah sits across from a girl he really likes. She's talking about her day, something about her boss, her deadlines, how stressed she's been. He listens, nods, offers advice. She smiles politely. She doesn't ask about his day. She never has. And Noah doesn't offer it, not because he doesn't want to, but because deep down he doesn't believe it matters. He's become the person everyone can rely on, but no one really knows. He answers texts immediately. He apologizes even when it's not his fault. He says yes to things he doesn't want to do. He's always available, always agreeable, always there, but never quite real. People call him kind, thoughtful, such a good listener. They don't realize that beneath all of that kindness is someone who never learned how to say, "I need something too." Bad parenting doesn't always come with chaos. Sometimes it's the absence of warmth, the absence of attention, the small daily dismissals that teach a child their feelings are a burden, that their needs are too much, that love is a transaction, and affection must be earned. Noah's father wasn't cruel. He just had his favorites. He gave Levi the warmth, the energy, the presence. For Noah, there were rules, expectations, standards. He could get a B and be told to aim for an A. He could win a race and hear nothing at all. He could hurt himself and be told to walk it off. He tried harder. He spoke softer. He smiled more. He thought if he could just become the perfect son, maybe one day he'd get picked up too. But that day never came. And so he grew up believing that connection was conditional, that people stay as long as you meet their needs, that love is fragile, and he must work tirelessly to hold it together. Now as an adult, Noah finds himself in friendships where he's the one giving advice but never receiving it. In workplaces where he's praised for being dependable but never promoted. In relationships where he molds himself to be whatever the other person wants until he forgets who he actually is. He doesn't speak up when he's hurt. He doesn't set boundaries. He fears conflict like it's a threat to his very existence. And worst of all, he blames himself for every disconnection, because that's what bad parenting does. It doesn't just hurt the child in the moment, it teaches them how to hurt themselves for years to come. Noah carries a quiet sadness with him, not the kind you cry about, the kind you live with, the kind that builds a home in your bones and makes you feel tired, even when you've done nothing at all. But here's the truth, he never learned. It was never his fault. No child is responsible for the emotional blindness of their parents. No child is supposed to earn their place in a family. Children are not employees. They're not emotional investments. They're souls waiting to be held, seen, understood. And when that doesn't happen, when the blueprint of your worth is built on conditional love, it follows you everywhere. You see it in how Noah tiptoes around people's moods, how he checks in but never checks out, how he says it's okay when it's not, how he offers pieces of himself hoping someone will finally notice the empty space inside him. But no one does because he's gotten too good at hiding it. And deep down he knows this isn't living, it's performing. Yet even now, a part of him still hopes that maybe one day someone will walk through the door, look past Levi and see him. Not the helpful version, not the polite version, but the boy who sat building towers that always fell, just to be seen. What Noah never realized is that millions of people feel the same. People who were praised for achievements but never comforted in failure. People who were never yelled at but never celebrated either. People who learned to be useful instead of loved. They grow up with a silent ache, and unless they face it, name it, unravel it, they pass it on. Not because they want to, but because what we never heal, we often repeat. Noah learned to smile when he was hurting. He learned to nod when he was misunderstood. He became an expert in emotional translation, turning heartache into politeness, fear into silence, longing into helpfulness. Because in his childhood, every time he showed a real emotion, it disappeared into nothing. So he adapted. He stopped needing anything at all on the surface, but inside, he needed everything. Most people would never guess. On the outside, Noah's life looked stable, responsible job, kind demeanor, well-liked, but under the surface was a current of confusion. He didn't know how to ask for help. He didn't know how to rest. He didn't know what it felt like to be emotionally safe. Not because anything dramatic had happened, but because too many important things didn't. And that's what bad parenting can look like. Not always harshness, but emptiness. The subtle message that who you are isn't quite enough, that your value lies in how little you ask, how well you behave, how much you give. So Noah became a giver, always checking in on people, always being available, always holding space for others to fall apart. But when it was his turn, he pulled away. He didn't want to be a burden. He didn't want to be too much. And somewhere inside, he believed he didn't deserve the same kind of care he gave so freely to others. That's what emotional neglect teaches you. That your role is to serve, not to receive. That love is earned, not given. That the best way to avoid rejection is to become indispensable. But indispensability is not the same as intimacy. And Noah felt that difference in every quiet moment. After the messages were sent, the calls ended, the plans canceled. He sat with the ache of being everyone's go-to, but no one's first thought. He didn't know how to express this, so he turned it inward. Maybe I'm not interesting enough. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm just hard to love. But it wasn't true. It never was. The truth is, when children grow up emotionally unseen, they learn to disappear themselves. They become the friend who never interrupts, the partner who avoids conflict, the employee who takes on extra work. They live to maintain harmony, often at the cost of their own humanity. And when someone finally does offer real care, they don't trust it. They flinch, they downplay their needs. They sabotage closeness, not because they want to, but because deep down it feels foreign, unsafe, temporary. Noah didn't realize this for years. He just kept trying harder, kept showing up for people who never reciprocated, kept wondering why nothing ever really felt secure until one day he reached his limit. It wasn't dramatic. There was no meltdown, no big moment. It was a quiet evening. He sat in his apartment scrolling through a conversation where once again he'd said yes when he meant no. He felt the familiar heaviness in his chest. Not panic, not sadness, just hollow. And in that moment something broke, but gently. He whispered something he hadn't dared to say aloud since he was a child. I think I'm tired of earning love. He didn't know what would come next, but for the first time, he wasn't trying to perform. He wasn't trying to fix it. He just let the truth settle. And that's where healing begins. Not in grand breakthroughs, but in small moments of self-honesty. The quiet rebellion of choosing your own emotional reality over the one you were handed as a child. Noah started asking himself harder questions. Why do I always say yes? Why do I apologize when I've done nothing wrong? Why do I feel guilty when I set a boundary? And slowly he began to see the pattern. He had been raised in a world where love was quiet and selective, where his feelings were inconvenient, where his presence was tolerated, not treasured. Of course he became a people pleaser. Of course he feared being disliked. Of course he overfunctioned in relationships. It made sense, but it didn't have to stay that way. So he started small. He said no to a plan he didn't want to attend. He didn't apologize for it. He didn't over-explain, just no. And the world didn't collapse. He told a close friend for the first time that he felt unseen in their friendship. He spoke gently but clearly. And even though it was hard, he felt lighter afterward. He started writing again, not to prove anything, not to be praised, just to remember how it felt to hear his own voice. And over time, the layers of performance began to peel away. Not all at once. There were setbacks. There were days when he fell back into old roles. But there was also progress, new connections, a deeper understanding of who he was beyond the roles he had played. He learned that parenting doesn't stop in childhood. It continues in how we parent ourselves, in how we speak to our inner voice, and whether we abandon or comfort our younger self when old wounds resurface. Noah wasn't broken. He was conditioned, and once he saw that, he began to choose differently. This is the deeper psychology of bad parenting. It's not about blame, it's about recognition. Recognition that silence can shape a child's identity, that absence can echo louder than presence, that emotional needs ignored become emotional patterns repeated. But patterns aren't destiny. They're scripts, and scripts can be rewritten. Noah still struggles sometimes. He still catches himself smiling when he's not okay, still hears the old voice in his head that says, "Don't bother them, just be easy." But now he answers it. I don't have to be easy to be loved. That simple phrase has changed everything, because emotional intelligence isn't just about understanding others. It's about understanding the landscapes within ourselves, the places we abandoned, the feelings we buried, the needs we silenced. And the most beautiful part, Noah is learning to be the parent he never had, not for someone else, for himself. He's learning to sit with his own discomfort, to validate his own feelings, to see the small boy who built towers alone in the corner and whisper, "I see you. I'm here. You never needed to earn this." That's how generational patterns end. Not with blame, but with compassion. Not with shouting, but with soft truth. It's never too late to choose differently, because we don't become whole by being perfect. We become whole by being honest. And for the first time in his life, Noah is no longer disappearing. He's beginning to exist fully, imperfectly, honestly, and that is